Hi, Claudia here from Create with Claudia. Thanks so much for joining me today. I'm going to be showing you today how to make a 12.5 block. It's called the Square in a Square. It's a very traditional block and it's easy to make and it's lots of fun. It's also a great scrap buster. If you're here to make the block, go ahead and keep watching the video. This block is also part of my 2021 mystery quilt called Stars of the Prairie. And if you're here because of that, if I did put the link in my blog post. So if you're here because you're part of the mystery quilt, at the end of the tutorial there will be a short section telling you how many blocks you need to make this month and how much fabric, that sort of thing. But to start with, I'm just going to show you how to make this gorgeous 12.5-inch block. As always, I'd love it if you'd hit that subscribe button. Thank you so much. I always love new subscribers. And I am on social media at Create with Claudia, where I post all sorts of things daily. So thanks so much for stopping by and enjoy the video. Okay, so this block tutorial, as you saw in the introduction, is for a 12.5-inch square. 12.5-inch block. It's called Square in a Square. It's an easy block. You do need some bigger pieces, but it's fun to put together. And this one is in my purple version, and now I'm going to do this other one in a lighter version for you. So for one block that measures 12.5 inches, you're going to need the following. You're going to need 2 squares of the background fabric. Actually, let me put this purple one back up here so you can sort of see what I'm referencing. So for the dark purple, you're going to need 2 squares cut 6 7/8 inches, and I call that the background fabric. For fabric A, which is this light purple here, you're going to need 1 square cut 7 1/4 inches, and that's for this here, that equates to that. And lastly, for this center square, you need 1 square cut 6 1/2 inches. And this will make one block that measures 12.5 inches when finished. Okay, so the first thing you're going to do is you're going to take one of your background squares and you're going to cut it in half on the diagonal, just corner to corner. And you're going to repeat that with the other background square, so you end up with 4 triangles that look like this. Alright, so there are those triangles. I'm going to set those aside for a second. The next thing you're going to do is take this is fabric A, this is that coral, this is your 7 1/4 inch square. You're going to cut this on the diagonal 2 times, so you're going to cut it this way and this way, and it can be a little bit tricky. You don't want to shift your fabric, so I'm going to do it and I'll show you how. Just corner to corner. And then carefully move your ruler like so, and I need to stand up for this part. Alright, so now you have 4 triangles like that, and that's out of fabric A. So once you've cut that, you need to start assembling the block. Like I said, this is a fairly easy block to assemble. You just got to watch that 1/4 inch seam allowance and how you place these triangles. So you're going to use your 6 1/2 inch square here, and you want to, this is a tip for you, because you need to find the center line of this, because basically what we're going to do first is we're going to add these triangles from fabric A around the outside like so. And you're going to do 2 opposite ones, press them out, and then do the other 2 opposite ones. But first you need to find that center point here. You can either measure it and mark it, or I like to fold it and just finger press, making sure it's square all the way down, because this block builds on itself and you don't want to mess it up the first time, or it doesn't quite measure what you want it to. Alright, so there you can hopefully see, maybe you can see it, there we go, maybe you see better. This is a batik fabric. You can sort of see that square, line right there where I finger pressed. That is your center point. So you're going to take one of these, right sides facing each other, and then you're going to line up this point right here Let me get a pencil so I can show you. Right here with that folded line, and then line up your edge on here. And then you're going to sew a quarter inch seam allowance down this one side. And then you're going to repeat it on the other side. So I'm going to do that. I'm going to press it open and I'll be right back. Okay, so here we go. I've added the two sides, like the two little wings on there. And then I'm just going to add these two on opposite sides, repeating that trick where I'm going to fold it in half and get that line there to help guide me so these are nice and centered. And I'll be right back once those are added and show you how to add on the next row, or the next ring, I guess I should say. Alrighty, so here's the first, or the center part of this block, and that's what it looks like. You're going to want to trim off these little dog ears, and then we're going to add the outside, like so. And we're going to use the same method. It's nice now you have these sort of center points that it can help guide you. And we will do opposite to opposite, and then the other one. It's a little big here on my surface. You can't really see everything. So I'm going to start with one end. Like I said, I'm going to trim these off. I would probably use my ruler. And just trim that off a little bit. That's a little extra bulk you don't need in there. So get rid of those and then add these two wings, and I'll be back to show you what it looks like. One trick I want to show you before I start sewing this, and I would pin this because it's a long length, it's a fair length to sew, is I would sew it on this side so you can see this little, where your seam comes together here on the first square. Use that as your marker, so when you sew down this quarter inch on this side, sew right on or right behind that line, right to the outside of it, towards the outside of the block, and that'll give you a nice sharp point, so you get a nice sharp point there. Alright, so those two ends have been put on, and now we're going to add the other two ends. Let me move this a little bit, and we're going to use the same method again. Like I said, pretty easy once you get it going. Just need to make sure these are centered, and I'll be right back to show you the finished block. Alrighty, so here's the block finished. It should measure 12.5 inches square. You do want to trim off again these little dog ears here. You can take your rotary cutter, trim it off. If you need to square it up, you can. But basically I would go around and trim off all those dog ears. But this is your block. This is the square in a square block. Stick around if you are joining in the mystery quilt, the 2021 Create with Claudia mystery quilt. It's called Stars on the Prairie. Stick around. I have all the details for all the blocks you're going to need, because you're going to need to make more than one if you are participating in the mystery quilt. So if you stuck around, then you're probably interested, or you are participating in the 2021 mystery quilt over on my website, createwithclaudia.com. This is the block for February. This is month 2, and it is a square in a square, and it measured 12.5 inches, and I just showed you how to make that. If you are quilting along with us on this month, you're going to need a little bit more than just one block. We're going to be making a total of 4 blocks, and let me tell you how much fabric we're going to need for all of those. Of the background fabric, which is this light green, I'm keeping my background fabric the same every month. You're going to need half a yard for all 4 of your blocks. So half a yard of background fabric for February. For fabric A, which is this outside sort of triangles, you're going to need a fat quarter. And for fabric B, which is that center square, you're going to need, let me move these over a little bit, you're going to need another fat quarter. So that's the total amount of fabric you're going to need to make 4 of these blocks for February. And now I'll let you know what the cutting is. Of the background fabric, you're going to need 8 squares cut 6 7/8 inches. So 8 squares cut 6 7/8 inches. Of fabric A, which is this coral in my case, you need 4 squares cut 7 1/4 inches. So that's fabric A, 4 squares, 7 1/4 inches. And lastly, fabric B, you need 4 squares cut 6.5 inches square. And that's it, and that will get you all 4 blocks for this month. Okay, what do you think about the square in the square? Here it is finished. It's 12.5 inches square, and it's called the square in the square. Makes sense, there's 2 squares in there. It's lots of fun, it's a great scrap buster, and this is the one I'm actually making for my quilt along. If you saw at the end of the video, and if you're joining in, this is part of my my mystery quilt for 2021. And whenever I do that, I do a tester block. Whenever I do a new pattern I make a tester block. And this was my tester block for that, and it's all in purples. And I always think it's fun to see how different fabrics look. It's kind of hard, this is a bigger block, it's hard to hold it up so it doesn't flop around. But you can see the different colors and different fabrics make. That's one of my favorite things about quilting, is all the different fabrics and colors. As always, I'd love it if you'd hit that subscribe button. I always love new subscribers. Thank you so much. And I am on social media at Quilt with Claudia, where I try to post things daily on different platforms. So check those out too. Thanks so much for stopping by, and have a great day.